Can you hear me all right? Okay. This is Dan Jones with Stu Reid. Mr. Reid, tell me why you came to Ashland.
Because I didn't want to work for somebody else all my life, and I wanted to work for myself. And there was an opportunity to come to Ashland and start a business of my own.
Did you come here with anybody to start a business with?
Came here with my wife.
Okay. What was the community like when you first came here?
Very small. You think it's small now. Well, it was very small then. When we first moved down here, we came to look to see about buying a house or renting a house. There were 3 houses for sale in the whole greater Ashland area. So we did buy one. There were 2 places to eat. There was a little place called Brownie's, a hamburger joint, and then there was a restaurant where the Wachovia Bank is now. They were the only places to eat in the town. You could put a cannon out in the middle of number 1 highway and shoot it north, and you wouldn't hit a damn thing.
Really? Wow.
There was just no traffic on number 1.
That's insane. In your mind, what makes Ashland so special?
I think the people.
About your family background, what do you remember about your grandparents?
My mother's parents, I did not know at all. Mother was born in France. She came to this country as a World War I war bride. Her parents never came over, and I never went over there. My father's parents came from the Valley of Virginia, and my grandfather lived with us for, I guess, 10 or 15 years when I was a kid growing up, until he died.
Why did he live with you guys?
He and my grandmother separated after he had 12 children. They figured they better get away from each other, I suppose. But they separated, and he lived with us, and she just went around to different places.
What did you do when you went to go see them?
What did I do?
Well, yeah, did you ever visit?
Visited very often.
Yeah, okay.
And my grandfather lived with us.
Yeah, oh, that's okay. Did they ever talk about, or did your grandfather ever talk about his youth or have any stories about his life?
No.
Okay.
He worked in the coal mine some. He talked about that.
Yeah. Tell me about your job when you came here.
When I came here, I worked in Manassas for 11, 12, 13 years at the Baker Funeral Home there. And I tried to get Mr. Baker to say that he would like to, for me to have the place when he died, that I could buy it. But he wouldn't enter into a contract with me, so I didn't want to stay there and waste my time. So I found that an old widow lady, a maiden lady, owned a funeral home here in town, Crew in Clayton, and she was not happy with her manager, and so I came down and talked to her, and a funeral supply salesman, a casket salesman, rigged this deal up and everything. He said that when he first talked to her, Miss Chris asked, "What does he go to church? Is he religious?" She said, Graham said, "Well, yes, Miss Chris, he's Catholic." She said, "Oh no, he won't work here. And all those children, no, indeed, won't work here." And he said, "Well, he's probably not going to have a whole lot of kids." But she sold me the place. And I had to take her nephew with it as a minor stockholder. But anyway, we were successful, and her business has gone well down because it wasn't run properly. So we built it up, and I think we got it to the point that we were doing maybe 90 calls a year. And then my associate developed a problem that I couldn't put up with, so I said, you either buy me out or I'll buy you out, and we'll separate peacefully and enjoy each other. And so he did. He got some money to buy me out, and I was going to go to work for one of the big funeral homes in Richmond. Yeah. But about that time, when I first moved down here, I knew that the building that I'm in, that I have now, was going to be erected, and it was. They built that in 1970 and opened it to the public in 71. And so I knew that I couldn't go to work there. So a real estate agent called me, and he said, are you looking for a funeral home? Would you like to buy a funeral home? And I said, all depends on where it is. He said, well, there's one for sale in the town of Ashland. Well, I knew it wasn't Crew and Clayton, so it had to be the Hanover Funeral Home out on number 1. And I said, yeah, I'd be interested in talking to you about that. He said, okay. I said, is it, got any idea what they're asking for it? He said, I think they'll probably sell it for 25 cents on a dollar of what they cost them to build it, because their business had gone way down too. They did very well the first year, but after that it went to almost nothing. So they did sell it, and in 75 was when I made that the Reid Funeral Home.
How long have you been working there now?
From 75 until now. I sold the business, just the business. I sold the business in 96, and I officially retired in 96.
Which school did you attend?
Mortuary school.
College?
I went to William & Mary for 2 years, and that was before there were the volume of scholarships that there are now. I did not come from a wealthy family, and I think Randolph Macon offered me a $25 scholarship when I graduated from high school in 47.
Want to take that off?
No. So I went to William & Mary and spent 2 years there, and it came to the point that I knew I was going to have to drop out of school and work for a while. I was working 3 jobs and going to school, and I knew I was going to either have to drop out of school and save some money and come back, or change my vocation. So my roommate, his father was a funeral director in Florida, and he would send all these magazines to his son, trying to entice his son to maybe go into the business, Well, the son had no desire to go into the funeral business, no. But he hooked me.
Yeah.
So I went to the funeral home owner in Manassas and asked him if I could serve my resident traineeship there, and he wouldn't let me. He was afraid that I would open up against him after I got my license or something like that. So at that time there was an old funeral home in Occoquan. You know where that is?
No, I do not.
Occoquan, yeah, down on the river, Potomac. Hall Funeral Home. And I went down and talked to the old gentleman, and he said, yeah, come on, I'll take you. Well, I got a real varied apprenticeship, resident traineeship, and I was there for 2 years. And let's see, I finished my resident traineeship, and I went in the Army for 2 years, stationed in Alaska. That was before Alaska was a state, and I got overseas pay for serving in Alaska. So when I came back, I applied to Pittsburgh Institute of Mortuary Science, and I was up there a year, and then came back and took my state boards and got my license. So I was licensed in 56.
What were your experiences when you were in the Army in Alaska?
It really wasn't bad up there. That was when the Korean War was going on, or the police action, whatever they call it. And we had people up there that had been in the Army and stationed in Alaska. They had been there for 10 or 15 years. And I was with the first draftees that were ever sent up there. And we were not looked on favorably. They'd been there, they didn't want to leave, and they knew they had to leave when we came in. So, but we had people that would volunteer to go to Korea to get out of Alaska.
Really? Was that bad?
Oh yeah, it wasn't bad really.
Not
It wasn't bad duty, and if you wore the proper clothing, you didn't get frostbitten or anything like that. And I worked in an office all the time. I had a good deal. I was a food service inspector. I had a Gray's registration MOS, and I inspected mess halls. So It was really good. And I had a warrant officer over me, a Mr. Kenkowski, who was from Baltimore, and he'd take a little nip once in a while, and he'd be asleep in the back, and I'd go out and do whatever I wanted, and it was okay with him. So I was fine. I wasn't bad at all. Good duty.
What were the major differences between your education and your parents' education?
My mother graduated from high school. My dad probably got a third grade education at the most.
In what ways did having a college in your town affect your life?
Yeah, there's so many things here in this town that the townspeople can do and can be a part of that they don't take advantage of. You have a lot of speakers that come to the college all the time. You have a lot of programs, things that productions you put on, and people don't take advantage of them, and they should, because it's a tremendous opportunity. I think we're fortunate to be to have Randolph-Macon here. Now, I don't want to see Randolph-Macon buy any more property. I think Randolph-Macon's big enough right now. I hate to see it go off the tax rolls. Because when they buy the property, it goes off the tax rolls. But it's good to be in a college town. It really is, if you take advantage of it.
Any particular memories about the events at Randolph-Macon, or that they happen around at Randolph-Macon?
Oh, I remember one thing especially. Let's see, I forget how many years ago. It was in the summertime. In fact, we had not even put in air conditioning in this house yet. When we bought it, it was not air conditioned. So it had to be just a year or so after we bought the house. And it was in about this time of year. And I was sitting in the living room, and the door was open. Janet had already gone to bed. And all of a sudden, this guy came in the front door, and he said, "This is the dullest damn party I've ever been to in my life." And he just went the wrong way. Instead of going College Avenue that way, he came this way. He was one of the fraternity boys up there. But, we can sit in the summertime if you're outside. You can hear the band playing and stuff like that, and you can enjoy it.
Did your family attend church?
Oh, yes. My mother, my mother attended the Catholic Church. And my dad attended a Baptist church. Here, my wife is Methodist and I'm Catholic. We're a very ecumenical family. Yeah. And our daughter was baptized in both churches.
What is your congregation made up of?
You mean older, young?
Older, young, ethnicity?
It's predominantly Caucasian. We have a few black families. We have maybe 2 or 3 Spanish-speaking families, but the rest of them are just run-of-the-mill Americans.
What were some of your earliest childhood memories?
Living in the country, way out in the country.
Where did you live exactly?
We lived in a place called Buck Hall, which was south of Manassas. It's not even a place anymore. I think what's the name of it? The Prince William Parkway goes right through the middle of it now. So it's not there anymore. But we lived I rode the school bus to school, and I remember my youngest sister was still going to school with me at that time. And I think I was about in the 4th grade. But my mother let my sister stay home from school because she was sick. And I wanted to stay home from school. And she said I had to go to school. So I went to where the bus stops, and I stayed behind the bend in the road until the bus left. And then I was scared to go home. So I walked to school. And that was walking about 10 miles. But I got there in time to catch the bus to come home.
I bet you did. I hope you did. What did you do for fun as a child?
Well, living in Manassas, We went to Washington a lot. Um, we had the milk bar there in town, which, uh, there wasn't a whole lot of things to do except to be in school and participate in athletics and literary things at school.
What was the greatest joy or sadness of your childhood?
Oh, God, I have no idea. I have no. My childhood's been so long ago.
Yeah, that's true.
God.
This is also memory.
Probably a great joy of childhood was Christmas and Easter, because our grandfather lived with us, and he probably enjoyed Christmas at his age more than we did, maybe. He was always the first person up on Christmas morning and Easter morning, always, and he'd wake us up, and he always made a black egg. He would take a boiled egg and put lard on it, and then some soot out of the fire, and make the egg black. And we had to make a nest for the Easter Bunny to lay eggs when I was little. And so he'd always put a black egg, because he said we didn't deserve, the other ones. Well, we got the other ones too. But he enjoyed it, and we enjoyed being with him. And my mother, until the day she died, she loved Christmas. Loved decorating and baking and making stuff for the tree and stuff like that.
Where were your children born?
Just one. And she was born right here in Ashland. We moved down here in January of '69, and she was born in December on our mother's birthday. At St. Mary's.
Who made the decisions about housekeeping, the budget, and taxes?
I think it's sort of a joint thing.
Tell me about your neighborhood and your neighbors.
Right here.
Yeah.
Well, we have 2 vacant houses on the street now. Across the street, a lady that lives over there, she works in the heart transplant unit at MCV. Very nice lady. Her mother is 90 years old, and today Janet said she'd been out working in the yard all day long. All day long in the heat, 90 years old. There's next door, the youngest kids are twins who are in college now. They're good neighbors. And then up the street, across the street, there's Pat, and she's a maiden lady, and her mom was a thorough joy to be around, and probably one of the reasons why we moved into this house when it became vacant. And then her aunt used to live next door, and she was a pistol. Thoroughly enjoyed her, and we miss her, we really do. But the lady that lives there now is a librarian in Sandston Elementary School. And then there's a PhD that lives up the street. They're good people. It's a good mix of people.
What do you think is most important to the people in your neighborhood?
To get this damn road finished right now. That would be a big help. That would be very good, yeah. It's not as bad now as it was, but it's to keep the neighborhood safe. I think that's the most important thing, because a lot of, the people that live in this neighborhood are getting up in my age. I'm 77, and they're getting up at my age, and it's, you want to be careful. You want to make sure that it's a good place to live in, and it is. And they help each other.
Is it mostly just so most of the problems are Randolph Macon just trying to buy more property?
That's as far as I'm concerned, yeah. How much you party, I don't care.
Would your neighborhood have any gathering places, or would you have any community picnics or?
We have, let's see, last year, Janet and I had I forget, it was in the fall. It was beginning to get cool, just before, cold weather set in. We had a get-together on the driveway and invited all the neighbors. I think there were 25 or 30 of us. Had drinks, we furnished the food and everything. And the Martins over here always have a Christmas party and various and sundry things.
What do you know about the original Henry Clay Inn?
The original.
The original.
Well, the original used to be up here on the vacant lot.
Okay.
And it burned in 1946. And then the PhD that I was telling you about, the Martins, they built the Henry Clay Inn, the one current Henry Clay Inn.
Wow.
And it's all got deep pockets. It has 18 rooms in it. It's furnished with antique reproductions. But the Henry Clay Inn, that was a successor to the Henry Clay Hotel that was over on the campus where Randolph-Macon is now. And that's why Randolph-Macon came here, was because the hotel was there.
Yeah.
Randolph-Macon came here with 7 students.
Do you know anything about Hughes's drugstore?
Oh, yes. We used to deal with Hughes's drugstore.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I didn't know Doc Hughes. Let's see. I guess it was his father, Doc's father, that originally started the drugstore, and then Doc had it, and then David was the pharmacist when we came here, his son, and we've known David since we've been here, and we know his two boys. His wife died. His first wife died several years ago, mother of the boys. But Hughes Drugstore, and we used to have 3 privately owned drugstores in town, Hughes and Barnes and Piccolo's.
Do you know anything about Duke's Market?
Oh, yes. Yes. The best meat in town.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mr. Duke is he's not he doesn't get out among the people too much, but the store was open 7 days a week, and he was there most of the time.
Where did you buy your clothes and do your marketing?
We did most of our marketing in town. Most of our clothes were bought in Richmond.
What other businesses are located in Ashland that you know of?
But other businesses.
Businesses. I guess I don't know what other businesses. Any other funeral home businesses except for the other one?
There are 2 other black funeral homes.
Oh, okay.
There's a H.W. Dabney, and there's an F.E. Dabney. And the Dabneys were, of the H.W. Dabney, Mrs. Dabney that ran that was the sister of Floyd Dabney, who had the F.E. Dabney. And they're all dead now. It's just their son and their sons, adopted son and natural sons that are running places now. But, Cross Brothers Market, my God, has been here since almost forever. In fact, the meat cutter that was at Duke's Market now is at Cross Brothers. And Mary, that worked in the store almost forever, she's at Cross Brothers. So they're good people. And there's the wine shop uptown, Tobacco and Wine Shop, which is very good, and the train store. There's a lot of businesses around here, even with that Walmart.
What was the town of Ashland like when you first got here compared to today?
It was, I guess, slower. It was a slower pace of life then. And you might think it's a slow pace of life now, but geez, yes, we barely moved then. But it was a slower pace of life, and everybody knew everybody, and it's not that way now. There are a lot of people in town I don't know anymore.
What do you remember about the train service in Ashland?
When we first came down here, there was no train service in town. The Amtrak just went straight through and never stopped. I forget exactly when train service was restored, but the train station, which is the visitor center now, the train station was vacant, boarded up for a long time, and then the town or the R.F.P. Railroad sold it to the town for $1. and they made it into a visitor center. And I worked there one day, usually one day a week, volunteer. But the train station is, I mean, the train service is fantastic, and I would hope that it doesn't leave. I know they're talking about the transportation plan and everything, and probably taking the passenger trains off and putting them through Doswell or something like that, and just run the freights through here. Well, you know, they run the garbage train through here every day and back. You know, that's enough.
Yeah.
But the train station, it's hard to imagine that there's about 12 to 15,000 people that board that train every year here in Ashland, and they don't buy tickets here. We don't sell tickets. You buy your ticket from the conductor on the train, or you buy it on the internet.
Yeah.
It's great, and it's a good thing for the town.
Yeah.
The early morning train, I think it's a 6:10. There's probably 15 or 20 people out there every morning to board the train to go to D.C. to work.
Wow.
And then there's an 11-something train that's a very popular train. There's sometimes 25 or 30 people out there waiting for the train. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the town, and I sure hope they don't dispose of it.
What do you remember about the trolley service in Ashland?
I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
That was gone by the board before I came here.
Okay. In the town of Ashland, is there any carnivals, or is there any big community gatherings?
But the biggest community gathering is the Strawberry Fair, held in Randolph-Macon on the streets.
That's during June and July.
It's the first Saturday of June now, being that Randolph-Macon's gone back to the last weekend, the last Sunday of May for the graduation.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the first Saturday in June for the Strawberry Fair. And that's about the biggest thing that happens. There are 25,000, 30,000 people that come into town for that.
I guess that's it. Thank you.
All right.